that meant the majority of other clubs throughout the league had a little bit of time off, but now they're back. Now they're back this weekend to go ahead and continue this really what is the final stretch
Yeah.
of the regular season. There is, quite frankly, it's less. I was going to say a month, but it's less than a month left remaining in this regular season. Let's take a look at the slate of games that are going to be taking place this weekend. All 12 clubs in action. We've got Orlando Pride versus Portland Thorns kicking things off Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern. OL Reign versus Chicago Red Stars Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern. Washington Spirit versus San Diego Wave FC. Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern. North Carolina Courage versus Racing Louisville FC. Saturday at 7 p.m. ET. And then Sunday, another doubleheader to close things out. It's Houston Dash versus Angel City, 7 p.m. ET, and New Jersey, New York, Gotham FC versus Kansas City Current, closing out things Sunday, 6 p.m. ET. Let's start making some picks. I feel like it's been a long time since we've done this, even though it's not true. We made some picks just last weekend, but we're gonna make some picks for all the matches this weekend. Perhaps let's start with what we consider some of the biggest games this weekend, ones that we're gonna keep maybe a little bit closer of an eye on. Let's start with Orlando Pride versus Portland Thorns. This one again kicking off things on Friday at 7 p.m. ET. Lisa, when you're looking at these two teams, who are you picking and why? Why is this one of the biggest games of the weekend for you?
This match between Orlando and Portland is huge because we remember back, I mean, the international break, it feels like it lasted a lifetime. So we have to remember back before that when both of these teams played. And you look at a team like Orlando Pride, they were on a bit of a streak, picking up points, whether it was ties, getting draws and splitting points with another team. They had 2 wins at the end of August there, but they are coming off of a loss to OL Reign. But this was a moment that match against OL Reign was at home at Exploria Stadium, and they're back at home against this Portland Thorns side. So in speaking with Seb Hines a few weeks ago, the interim head coach for Orlando Pride, he said that Orlando enters this really tough stretch where they're playing teams like OL Reign, Portland Thorns. They've got North Carolina Courage also coming up, but they're playing at home, those matches. So they went on the road and they ended up picking up really big wins over teams like San Diego, Kansas City. So now that they're at home, can they turn that around, use that to their advantage? When you look at the last match that Orlando played against OL Reign, it was 1-1. Orlando ended up scoring first in this game. They picked off a pass from OL Reign, and then they got on the board first. And then they let up a late game equalizer for Megan Rapinoe, who was on a tear throughout August. She won NWSL Player of the Month, and for very good reason. But she was one of the players that made such an impact in that game against Orlando. So now, as you look at this Portland side, they're coming off back-to-back losses. Their most recent one was a 2-0 loss to San Diego. And this Portland side is sitting in 4th place of the standings. And they're a couple points off of that top line because San Diego in number 1 is 31 points, Portland 28 points. And as you mentioned, this is the point in the season where it comes down to crunch time because Portland wants to climb the standings. They want to be first or second, get a bye. I mean, they want to be first, get the shield, get a bye in the first week of playoffs. But if they keep dropping points, they'll continue to drop, obviously, in the standings. So this is a game that Portland has to win. Meanwhile, Orlando, they're number 8. So they're just outside that playoff bubble. They're looking to continue and go on that streak of picking up points. It's at Exploria Stadium, which gives the upper hand to Orlando. But I think this Portland side, having a bit of rest, their players coming back from international break now, I think I'm going to give the upper hand to Portland Thorns in this match.
Listen, I like the pick. I'm leaning towards Portland as well. When I was looking at this particular matchup, I was like, who needs it more? I like that you highlighted that a little bit right now. I think if you're making the argument for both teams, you could say that they both kind of feel that way, despite Portland among the top 3, trying to chase the shield. You have an Orlando Pride team that went on a really good streak very recently, had that snapped, but they're on the outside looking in. So they are maybe going to play also a little bit with a certain sense of urgency. Maybe that's different from Portland Thorns. And, we're going early. We're going early this morning with everybody joining us, live. But I'm curious, because of that, we don't necessarily have the availability reports, coming into this weekend of games. So I'm curious what that looks like for Portland with some of their international players who have, spent time or are coming off of that international window. We saw Sophia Smith get a lot of minutes over the course of those 2 matches with the United States, and take a little bit of a knock here and there, quite frankly. So I'm curious of if she's going to be on a minutes restriction, how she's going to look and feel for this team. And I do think this is a game that if she's able to go, could be the game where maybe she gets back, some of that dog, right? We'll just label it like that. Some of that, we're looking for those goals again. It's like she came back from CONCACAF championships and she picked up where she left off, but there's a couple games here prior to heading into this international break that they just participated in, where she was, a little bit iced, in front of goal. So I'm curious if coming off of these games that she just had 2 really good performances against another good Nigerian team, that she can carry that into this game and build off of it. So I do think this defensive shape from Orlando Pride could be a good test, could be the thing that, Sophia Smith can break through and get back to the goal scoring and, maybe even, stay relevant in that Golden Boot race. So I'm curious if this has the makings of a draw, but I think Portland will have a little bit more, and I'm going to give them the edge in this one as well. So I'm going with the Thorns as my pick in this one as well.
So I like that you picked Portland as well in this one because and you think it'll be close, right? You're dabbling with the idea of a draw, and I totally see that as well. The last time these 2 sides played, Portland dunked on Orlando. It was 6-0 in that game. So I don't think it'll be a blowout by any means. I think it'll be much closer. We've seen so much more from Orlando, but we're both sticking with Portland on this one.
Yeah, let's look at another big game this weekend. It's going to be OL Reign versus Chicago Red Stars. They're pretty close in the table, right, against each other. And I think this is a game where you're looking at these 2 particular teams, and you have to imagine that the 2 of them are also keeping an eye on what's in front of them a little bit. Maybe perhaps feeling like that shield is not out of reach when you're looking at anywhere from like a 5 to 6 point swing. So I do imagine that this game, they're perhaps viewing it like that a little bit. You've got, again, 2 teams in the upper half of the table, but in those lower playoff spots, and looking at each other and saying, hey, like this can be one of those 6 point games if we get the full, win against the opposition here. So when you're looking at these 2 teams, Lisa, do you have an outright winner? Is this the one that you're looking at as a draw? Tell me what you're thinking about this game.
Yeah, you've read my mind, Sandra. This is my potential draw for the weekend. I think that the way that these 2 sides shake out and sitting 5 and 6, OL Reign and Chicago respectively in the standings, as you mentioned, just 1 point off of each other and 4 or 5 points off of the number 1 role, a number 1 spot in the standings. I mean, OL Reign is coming off back-to-back wins before the international break. The last one against Orlando is the late game winner by Megan Rapinoe, but they ended up conceding first in that game. And that's something that OL Reign has struggled with. They have these small moments of breakdown and then they concede. And against a team like Chicago will capitalize on that and punish teams for doing that. Now, as you mentioned, the last match we talked about, we don't have availability reports as of now. So the question marks around Chicago's players, whether it's someone like Pugh coming back, Nair coming back from international break, I think both of them should be good to go. But defensively and the structure for Chicago is still a little bit flexible. There's a little bit of movement there in that back line to see who's available, who can go. If Chris Petroselli has a little bit more depth defensively for the Chicago side, I would perhaps give them the upper hand over OL Reign because Chicago is coming off of a dominant 4-0 win over Racing Louisville, a win that Chicago needed 100%. They had been struggling to put up goals in matches before that one. The match just before, they conceded 4 to North Carolina. So scoring was a bit of a struggle for Chicago. And as you mentioned with Sophia Smith, I think Mallory Pugh gets the rub from the national team and getting 2 consecutive starts over this international break with the U.S. side in those friendlies, just adding so much to the roster for the U.S. I hope she brings that back to Chicago, and I think that she could. So honestly, I have a draw between these two sides. I really do. What about you? Who are you looking at here?
I don't blame you. Again, I think there's a number of these games. I think when we're talking about what we're talking about right now in terms of the biggest matches, this weekend games that we're keeping an eye on, I think you can make a case for any of these couple of matches that we're talking about to try to make the argument for a draw between these teams specifically. And I do think that this one in particular also has similar arguments, but I'm not gonna save my draw for this one. I'm gonna go with the winner. And listen, it's the final stretch of the regular season, so I'm in Chicago, and I'm going Chicago all the way. I'm gonna go with the Red Stars as my pick in this one. These two teams, playing prior in the regular season. It was it was an interesting match. It was another one of those, like, we saw, like, kind of those kind of, I don't want to say it was like kind of a grinder out type of a match, but it was a narrow scoreline between the two teams, and Chicago took all 3 points at home. And these two teams typically play each other, pretty closely. They have played to numerous draws before in the past, but I just don't consider these two teams the similar teams of the past, and they're both two teams who are, in very different parts of their season right now. So I'm curious of, if someone like Megan Rapinoe is going to continue that, lights out kind of form that we've been, seeing from her through August, into a match like this. Again, another player coming off of that international window. And I'm looking at Chicago and I'm wondering, while they had a few players out on international duty for both the United States and Canada, I'm curious if maybe the little a bit of extra time off aided this team, aided them, and is helpful for some of the players who are carrying a bit of knocks, into this point of the season. We're starting to see very small minutes from somebody like Morgan Gautrat, and if she is someone that they are working back slowly, they don't have a lot of time left to do that. So I'm curious if she's able to have some more minutes in this game. And listen, if she does, this is a player that can absolutely calm things down in the middle third for the Chicago Red Stars team. And when you're looking at midfield versus midfield, I think a lot of it's going to be dictated, there between these two sides. So Vanessa DiBernardo and Danny Codoperico have been having excellent seasons for Chicago in their midfield. So I don't blame you for going with a draw, but I also, wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being another one of those kind of narrow, close matches, but maybe there's a winner on the end of it. And I'm going to be hopeful that it's Chicago. So we'll see. Last one for the biggest games that we're going to be keeping a special eye on this weekend. We've got Houston Dash taking on Angel City FC. Houston Dash hanging out in that top 3. They've also got the shield in their sights. Angel City still on the outside looking in. They have gone weeks now just looking at either that 5th or 6th spot, trying to have the game that will propel them into the top 6. And they're going to be going up against a pretty heavy hitter here. Lisa, do you have a winner in this one?
I mean, the heavy hitter in Houston, 100% the heavy hitter in this match. It's one of the biggest matches of the weekend. I was just talking with someone who follows the NWSL closely, but has been incredibly busy with other stuff this summer. And they were looking at the standings and they were like, Houston, number 2. And I was like, where have you been? This team is on fire right now. They're incredibly fun to watch. They're coming off of Houston Dash is coming off of a draw and a loss prior to that. But before that, 6 matches for Houston where they were picking up points. They were on a run. Meanwhile, Angel City, they're on a little bit of a run themselves. 4 games undefeated. But during this international break, they did play the Mexican national team where they suffered a loss. We saw different player rotation. And I think moments like that really help a team like Angel City, where other players are getting minutes. for starters and players that play 90 minutes, when they get the opportunity to sit on the bench and watch a game unfold, you end up learning so much more because it gives you a different perspective. And you're not just pissed off because you're not on the pitch, but you're actually learning from what's happening, what the player in your position is doing on the pitch, so you can help them. And that in turn helps yourself. So I think Angel City does have a little bit of an advantage there with their 4 undefeated, that their star players and their starters ended up getting a rest over this international break. They didn't play in that competition. But going up against this Houston side that is on a tear, as you mentioned, Maria Sanchez, a player that did play in this international break against Angel City. She has a little bit of understanding as to what's to come in this match. I think Ebony Salmon has also done a fantastic job. When you look at the back line for Houston, they have moments where they've struggled this year, but overall, it's much tighter now for Houston defensively than it was earlier in this season. And the fact that Houston's number 2 in the standings, 29 points, just 2 points off of that number 1 spot that San Diego holds at the top, I think Houston's going to win this one over Angel City. I want to see them keep going. I don't know. I'm riding this like Houston Dash roller coaster right now.
Oh yeah, look, dash the F on, right? Like that's the energy right now. Like they're absolutely rolling with it. I'm with you. I wanna continue to see them make a push for number 1. You know, I think no matter what they've got, they definitely have their first ever NWSL regular season postseason appearance like in their sights, right? This is like one thing they can finally check off. But I mean, within that, they're potentially competing for so much more. Like they absolutely have something like the Shield in their sights. It's not unrealistic for them at this point in the season. And I just really like their individual pieces, you know, that they have on the pitch for Houston. I think it's a little bit disrespectful, quite frankly, that Katie Naughton wasn't listed for, you know, Team of the Month in August, and she hasn't been listed to my recollection. And anyone can please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think she's been named to any Team of the Month this year, and she's been an absolute staple for that team on their back line in this incredible season that they've been having. She's been like the constant for them, quite frankly.
She has been for years, frankly. She has been the constant in the back line for Houston for years.
So I think, you know, sort of having, you know, someone like that being able to not just anchor but quarterback your defensive back line, and then, you know, making the offseason move and signing for somebody like Maria Sanchez, the midseason move for somebody like an Ebony Salmon. I think it's finally all coming together for this franchise, perhaps at the right time. And, you know, who would imagine that would be the case, you know, when you're losing somebody like a Rachel Daly, but they seem to be, you know, handling all of these things coming their way. And I would like to continue to see them go ahead and continue on this really impressive run. So I'm also going with Houston in this match for the weekend. I'm hopeful that we're going to get to come back here and be correct. But, you know, we love to come back onto the recaps and check and see if we're right or wrong. But let's make some other picks, Lisa. Washington Spirit versus San Diego Wave FC. Who you got?
So this match, who do we have? Washington, San Diego. Washington is struggling, right? Coming off that draw versus Houston. They let up a stoppage time equalizer in that match. They've also got a new interim coach because Angela Salem coached the last time Washington was out. So now they have Albertine Montoya, who coached collegiately Santa Clara, Stanford, WPSL, WPS. He also coached Nicole Barnhart, Kelly O'Hara, players at Washington Spirit. So they have a bit of stability back in Washington. And San Diego, back-to-back wins before the international break. They're at the top of the standings. Is this the week that Washington gets their very first win since the start of the season? No. San Diego, I have them taking the win in this one. I think that Alex Morgan's on a bit of a tear right now, and coming back from international break, she's pumped up, she's fired, she's ready to go. I give it to San Diego in this one. What about you?
Yeah, I'm with you as well. I just again, I do wonder if some of this time off perhaps is going to help a team like the Spirits, but unclear, right? Uncertain, to be determined. That's one of that. That's sort of the energy right now. But I have a little bit of the opposite feeling of that when we're looking at a team like San Diego. Look, with so many few games remaining for some of these teams, especially the top three of these standings, I think San Diego is looking at those ambitions, the similar ambitions of a Houston Dash team, but trying to accomplish these things in their inaugural season, making a postseason, potentially winning a Shield, going far in the playoffs, maybe winning the whole damn thing, right? Like all of those things are probably on their list, but they've only got X amount of games to try to make that happen. And I like the energy coming out of this team. I'm also going with the Wave in this one. I don't know if Alex Morgan is going to be coming in and adding to her tally for the Golden Boot race. I wouldn't be surprised if she does, but I wouldn't be surprised if she doesn't either, right? We sometimes see that it needs to be a game or two to get readjusted after coming out of national team duty sometimes for the players as they return to the league. So we'll see how that looks for them. But that doesn't mean that I wouldn't like to see, somebody else be able to get those goals, whether it's somebody like a Amira Ali, right, or even a Jakobsen who has provided some interesting looks for them, out on the wing. So I'm going with San Diego in this one. We have some high hopes for them, right? I think in this season, hopefully they come and improve us right with this pick as well. Let's take a look at this next match: North Carolina Courage versus Racing Louisville. Again, two bottom half teams, but we're looking at two teams with two very different energies right now during the final month of this regular season. Who you got in this one, Lisa?
I have North Carolina picking up the win. They are coming up on after a midweek match that they just played. They ended up winning over Gotham, but only scoring a goal, and it was kind of a sloppy one at that, a bit redirected, but hey, they put the pressure on. They ended up getting the goal at the end of that match, and they're coming off games where they're scoring goals, 2 before that, 3 before that, 4 goals before that, 3 before that. They know how to find the back of the net. I think that North Carolina is going to come out and show this Racing Louisville side what they're made of. Racing Louisville, they're on a bit of a skid, right? They're coming off of that 4-0 loss to Chicago Red Stars. Before that, it was a slew of draws, 3 in a row. They really are just struggling at this point, and North Carolina is trying to shift into a different gear. So I have North Carolina for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know if there was a word that we could have used for what Racing was going through, whether it was something like a slump or a skid or what, because they just weren't picking up wins, but they also definitely weren't losing, but they definitely weren't getting the wins. So it's just like it's a confusion, quite frankly. They've got 2 total wins on the season this year. You hit it right on the head, coming off a really tough loss. Again, maybe another one of these teams that is going to benefit a little bit from the break. Maybe somebody like Savannah DeMello is going to come in and score another banger, that we've seen her do off of these sort of dead ball situations. Because we didn't see her get minutes during the national team games that she was invited to be a part of and participate in. So I'm curious as to how she's going to look for this team on her return, and I'm curious, to see if what this team's going to look like, without somebody like a Freya Olofsson, right? There was some news that broke around both these teams, quite frankly, for news and signings for either side. But Olofsson going to Real Madrid, I think, it's you're losing a piece for the remainder of this season if you're Racing. And again, I just think that North Carolina is playing with an entirely different type of energy, and I think they are definitely going to pick up all 3 points in this match. Last one for NWSL action, we've got New Jersey, New York, Gotham FC versus Kansas City Current. I like how we kind of spaced these out, Lisa, because we were talking about biggest matches that we want to keep an eye on over the weekend, and we're talking about a couple of teams here towards the end of this NWSL segment who have been struggling a little bit this season, and we've gone from Racing Louisville to Gotham FC. What are we looking at in this one when you're looking at a team like Gotham going up against a team like Kansas City?
I mean, I think we're looking at goals from a Kansas City side. Gotham is at home. This game will be played at Red Bull Arena, but Kansas City is on this unbelievable run, picking up points, undefeated in match after match after match after match. And Gotham is just really, really struggling right now. They have not even picked up points in a draw. Um, in incredibly long time. They have basically no points heading into this one. So I'm giving this one to Kansas City. They're going to come out guns blazing. They've got a great facility that they're in with. We talked about that national team rub. Haley Mace coming back from getting minutes with the national team over this international break. I give Kansas City the win.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just Gotham. We were talking a little bit about that game that they just came off of, and during the recap, we were like, God, it was almost going to be not a loss. Like it maybe wasn't going to be a win, but they were almost not going to lose, and it would have been like their first point that they picked up in weeks, and unfortunately, conceding that sort of late timed goal. And I'm wondering, and again curious how they're going to look with some of their pieces back in the mix, right? Whether it's Purse or Mewis, what's this team look like going up against a really hot Kansas City side? But I'm going with the Current as well. They've just got too good of form right now. Congrats to their players. They've got 3 players on the team of the month for August. And one of them being Lola Bonta, who's been massive for them in the midfield. So I'm going to be looking for another big performance from that player in particular against a team like Gotham, and hopefully they prove us right and make us look like geniuses because we made those picks.